Thank you for joining us, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first installment of our new editorial webinar series, Coffee Talk. Each hour-long information-packed episode curated by our editors will feature the insights and observations of an independent expert on a wide range of tech industry topics. Many thanks to the underwriting sponsor of this episode, RingCentral. Without their kind support and generous support, this series would not be possible. Now, thanks to you for joining us. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of Application Development Trends and Editor-at-Large for Redmond.com. In the Converge 360 group of 1105 Media, and I'll be your moderator if I can keep my lips working. Okay, today's topic is a hot one, and we're very glad to be presenting it. Top hybrid work trends for 2022 and beyond, and our speaker is Mr. Howard M. Cohen. Before we get going here, a bit of housekeeping. This episode is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. We'll have some time at the end of Howard's presentation for a Q&A. You can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our very best to get to all of them. Our sponsor, RingCentral, has provided some extra resources that can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. Be sure to check those out. And as a small thank you to all the attendees who stick with us to the end, we'll be sending you a $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. See, Starbucks, Coffee Talk. Anyway, now let's meet our speaker. For this episode, we called on technologist, content creator, and senior resultant, Howard M. Cohen. In his 35-plus years in the IT industry, Howard has held senior executive positions in many of the top channel partner organizations, and he currently writes for and about IT and the IT channel. Howard is a sought-after speaker, an insightful observer of the technology landscape, and one of my personal favorite presenters. Take it away, Howard.
Thank you so much, John. I was counting. I was wondering how many times you could emphasize the word senior in that introduction. Very, very good. And I think it's so appropriate that Coffee Talk, our new series Coffee Talk, is being rung in by RingCentral. It's pretty cool. And we're giving away Starbucks cards for Coffee Talk. It's great. This is got all the marking. So hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the first of what will be hopefully a very long series of Coffee Talk presentations. Today, for those of you who have attended any of my presentations in the past, you know that I love to start every presentation with a word that really embodies everything that we're here to talk about. So today's word is not cute dog. It is agility. This dog is obviously proving his agility or her agility by passing through this obstacle course. Now, personally, when I went to pick out the photos, I kind of fell in love with this dog and also with this dog. So I included both just for the heck of it. But agility in all of its forms. Agility when it comes to where we go to work. It used to be you had to get to the office, had to go to work every day. Now you don't have to go to work to get to work. You can work from home. You can work from a beautiful table facing a beautiful wooded scenery. You can work from the beach. You can work from wherever and whenever you want to. And knowing our industry, the IT folks tend to try to take best advantage of trends. So we're going to talk today about some good ways to take best advantage of all of these trends that are starting to emerge, coming out of the whole hybrid work movement. Clearly, it's no longer restricted to work from home, but as we start to get more control, people are talking about working from home, working from the office. Some people want to work from one and the other, depending on where they're going to get the best work done. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of trends that we see emerging around that. The first one, however, is going to be all about the users, because that's where I believe everything starts. If you don't have a user, why have tech? And we'll begin with reactions to working from home as we prepare for this life of hybrid work, working from wherever, whenever. Okay. So let's start off with survey says. And in this case, the survey says that remote workers have found that remote work leads to better mental health. I don't know why I chuckle every time I hear that, but gee, yeah, it does. It leads to better mental health. We're going to actually hit on some of the reasons that that's true. Also, they save a lot of money. You know, when you think about it, and you're in the office, you're probably going out to lunch or bringing lunch in. You certainly have to dry clean your work clothes. Now, of course, you only have to dry clean half your work clothes because you have to be business top and leisure bottom, right, to be on video. But the employees that were spoken to in this survey said that the top reason they love working from home is because they don't have a commute. They don't have to go to work to get to work. Yeah, 3/4 of them said cost savings is really important too. More than a third say they're saving at least $5,000 a year, not the 4 that we mentioned on average. And 1 out of 5 says, hey, they're saving over $10,000. So clearly, employees see an opportunity to save some money and also to have better mental health and not have to commute. Other things we found out. They had reasons to claim that their productivity has improved. So they're working from home and their productivity has just skyrocketed because they're working from home. First of all, there are fewer interruptions at home than there are in the office. Now, clearly, this survey included a lot of people who have no children. So that was pretty interesting, but seriously. They found fewer interruptions at home. That has a lot of, there's a lot to think about returning to the office and, you know, being besieged by interruptions. What does that tell us from a management perspective? They say they get more focused time at home. 2/3 of them said that. They also say they have a quieter work environment when they work from home. That sounds great. They're more comfortable. They have a more comfortable workplace, and that's important. And that's great. Over half of them, said they're really happy that they get to avoid office politics. Now, I don't know if that means they avoid speaking about politics in the office or they mean the politics that go on in the office, but it doesn't matter. Either one is really good. So that's another reason they feel that their productivity has increased and not dealing with all of that nonsense. A few more things. On average, and we're talking about the commute, the employees we spoke to said that they saved an average of 40 minutes daily commuting. Now, those of us who live in big cities remember hours of commuting, but apparently across the country, it's a 40-minute commute. And 70% people who were full-time workers worked from home during COVID. Now, we're not exactly sure where that number is going to go. However, and to me, this is one of the most important stats, 92% of the people surveyed expect to work from home at least one day, and 80% of them expect to work at least 3 days from home, 2 days in the office. That's their expectation. So clearly, the majority of people have no intention of returning to full-time in the office, very few people. While 20 to 25% of companies aren't doing anything about the cost of it, people are still enthusiastic about it. So it's not a function of, you know, the company paying for it. They're happy to have a room and have their own equipment. And you know, some are bringing home equipment, I'm sure, but that's not what's bothering them. 81% believe that their employer will continue to allow them to work from home, even as we move back to a more open environment. 59% said that they would be more likely to choose an employer who does offer remote work from home. It's almost 2/3 that's where they want to work. And that's turning into some challenges too. We'll be talking about that some more. I love this one. I would love to know how they measured this. Work from home workers reported being 22% happier than their counterparts in the office. They report being 22% happier. First of all, how do they know how happy their counterparts in the office are? Second of all, how do they measure 22%? But no, stats are stats. I do believe the people who are working from home are probably happier for all the reasons that we spoke about in the last slide. Also, the people who are working 40 hours a week, full-time workers, the ones who work from home work more than 40 hours, 43% more than the workers who are working in the office. So you're working at home and you're working overtime, 43% more than your companions who are working in the office. What does that mean? We're going to talk about that, but it means that people are working overtime. They're not necessarily getting paid for it. Interesting. Let's shift over to what management learned, because they had some interesting lessons as well. First of all, they very quickly learned that the lack of commute was among the top reasons, which was very encouraging for them, because they did not have to think that people hate the office. It was getting to and from the office that they really hated. The office itself was fine, right? Right? Sure. One very good effect that I think we all spotted was that the production of greenhouse gases was dramatically cut because there were so fewer vehicles on the road. It's been estimated that we were saving the equivalent of 600,000 cars being taken off the road every day. And that's great. You know, anything that slows the climate crisis is a good thing. And here's the important thing about that working more hours thing. Employers discovered that their employees were happy to work from when they would ordinarily start on their commute. That's when they would actually start working. And they would continue working until they would ordinarily get home from their commute. So however long their commute was, that was now additional hours of work that the employer was enjoying without having to pay for it and without even asking for it. Now, that speaks volumes to the quality of American workers, but it also speaks volume to the value of working from home. People are more concerned about the work than they are about the hours. And that's a very important lesson to learn, and it's a very important trend for employers to follow. If you're one of those employers who believes you've got to be standing over your employees' shoulders to make sure that they're working, well, think again. Because apparently these folks got more work out of their people than you do. The employers also found that, again, almost 2/3 of their employees would probably start looking for a new job if they couldn't work from home. Think about what it would be like to suddenly lose 2/3 or 58% of your employees. 44% knew somebody who'd already quit a job because they couldn't work from home. 24% of their employees told them they'd be willing to take a pay cut or lose some vacation time if it meant that they could work from home. That's amazing. And also, when we're talking about management, 90% of these executive managers themselves also want to work from home. So it seems like everybody likes working from home. And that's really no surprise. One stat that came out that was surprising to a lot of people is that businesses lose about $600 billion a year to workplace distractions. So you're losing $600 billion to workplace distractions. I'm waiting for the stat to come out that says this is how much we believe employees are losing to home distractions. I have a feeling it's going to be a fraction of that. And that's just me. They estimated that remote workers are indeed 35 to 40% more productive than in-office workers. So, yeah, we're seeing a productivity increase. 94% of the employers who were surveyed said that they think it's at least been the same. Two-thirds thought it might be the same or higher. And 67% said it would be the same. And 24% said it was actually higher, 27%. Forgive me. When employees started working from home. Clearly, everybody sees at least the same, if not better, productivity. So those who were complaining that people are not going to be productive when they work from home, a lot of people just don't feel that way. A lot of people have found that they do get the same or more. And of the employees, 51% say they've been more productive, and 95% said at least the same, if not higher. So everybody's agreeing. 60% reported being more productive than they thought they'd be, which, again, that's kind of subjective. And this is another great one. On average, respondents' productivity at home was 7% higher than they expected. Now, have they measured that? I'd love to see the survey, but 7%. Okay, they were more productive working from home. And this brings us to the concept of the big quit that we've alluded to several times. When you talk about trends that surround the move to hybrid work, the big quit is probably one of the biggest. Now, this particular slide actually refers to a very positive, very good big quit, in that it suggests that people consider quitting smoking, which I'm all for, and I hope you're all for. But we're talking about the big quit that has occurred in the industry. People quitting their jobs because they find out they're not going to be able to work from home much longer. And 54%, more than half, who work remotely, at least some of the time, said they'd like to split their time between working at home. They're looking for that hybrid arrangement so they can work part of the time at home, part of the time in the office. And I'd like to think they would make that decision based on where they'd be most productive. There are some things that you can just do better when you're in a group of people in the office. Fewer and fewer as we move forward. A third of them want to work from home exclusively. And before you think that the rest would like to work in the office exclusively, only 9% would like to return to the office full time. Very small portion. So clearly, working from home has been a very positive experience for employees and also for employers. They've both really gained from it. Half have admitted they would be willing to take a 5% pay cut. 25% said, heck, I'd quit. If I can't work from home, I'm gone. And as a matter of fact, 4.3 million did that just last August. So the trend started early. People streaming out of companies that declared, we're not going to let people work from home after the pandemic. 4.3 million quit their jobs and went looking for a job at a company that would let them work from home. So this is a concept that's pretty much here to stay. Also, 70% said they like virtual meetings better than in-person meetings. And I don't know why, but I don't find that surprising. It's much calmer. And you can, of course, do other things while you're meeting, which unfortunately too many people take full advantage of. So the big question becomes, how do you avoid the big quit? Clearly, people want to work from home at least part of the time. So the answer to the question, answering it in a general sense, is to give your people what they need to be successful. That is nothing new. That has always been the secret to retaining great employees. Give them what they need to be successful, because there's nothing people enjoy more than enjoying success. So what are the trends around keeping people connected? How do we make them more satisfied? How do we give them the tools they need for success? Let's first explore trends in tech. I know, crazy. Tech magazines, tech. We're going to do tech first. We're seeing a movement accelerating very quickly toward cloud-based everything. Where cloud was the exception a few years ago, cloud is the rule today. You're finding fewer and fewer companies that have anything left on-prem. And you're finding more and more clever technologists coming up with ways to provide whatever a company needs at a reasonable price with excellent service by delivering it from the cloud. Online productivity suites, if you track what they've been doing with online productivity suites, there has been more development in them, more improvements introduced in the last year than I personally have ever seen before. It's remarkable how many improvements we see every month from everybody. Microsoft 365 is a different product today than it was 2 years ago. G Suite has become Google Workspace since before COVID. So lots of change, lots of growth, lots more functionality, and all of it to help people communicate with each other better and work with each other better. And nothing helps that communication more than unified communications, especially when it's delivered from the cloud as a service. Unified communications takes all communications and starts them across the internet. Now that probably means that within a few years, we're going to see buildings stop maintaining two networks, one for phone, one for data, and just use one network. That will cut costs for people who do use office buildings tremendously. From a convenience factor, it's even bigger because all intra-company, the cost will go away. It'll be carried on the corporate network. Intercompany, yeah, there'll be a cost still for some time to come. But we see this movement toward unified communications as a service growing and growing. And we're seeing, as a result of that, more development than we've ever seen before. More new features, more new functionality. Anybody who is replacing a PBX these days is now looking at replacing it with UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service. We're also seeing a big move toward automated workflow management, and this really responds to those managers we were talking about before who believes that the farmer's shadow is the best fertilizer, that if they're not casting their shadow over their employees won't be working. Well, they've been proven wrong. And the way to measure it, because you can't manage what you don't measure, the way to measure it is to use automated workflow management. Automated workflow management allows employees to indicate when they're starting a project, when they finish the project, describing what they've done in the project. It keeps them in communication constantly with all forms of management at every level. Anybody can interrogate the data and find out what everybody has been doing. And more managers are now managing what was produced, the results. And coming from a senior resultant, results are the thing that's most important. So measure the results, and automated workflow management is what facilitates that. We're seeing much more activity in CRM, customer relationship management, especially with more and more call centers growing as the primary point of contact between companies and customers. We need CRM to feed those screen pops to those call agents that we talked about. We're seeing more expansion into enterprise resource planning platforms. ERP is the basic order processing engine for most companies, inventory management, everything that leads to the financials, everything that supports operations. It's all being automated more and more because it means that people don't necessarily have to be in any particular place to do their jobs. and we get to collect more data about what they're doing and learn more about the dynamics of what they're doing. And we can use those analytics to improve upon what they're doing. Similarly, an uptick in project management. Using project management software, we can establish a baseline for when things are supposed to be accomplished, what's supposed to be accomplished, and who's supposed to accomplish it. And then we can track our results against that baseline and very early on spot when things are delayed or when things are overrunning budget. Hopefully, everybody is taking fullest possible advantage of automated data backup. Yes, when it's in the cloud, when everything's in the cloud is certainly providing some level of backup. They have multiple data centers they can fail over to. And yes, your data is replicated in multiple data centers. That does not remove the responsibility that you have for the sanctity of that data. Honestly, if the data is somehow destroyed or otherwise lost, it's your job that will be lost. But it's far easier today to establish and maintain automated data backup than it ever has been before. There are fewer points at which humans are introduced into the process, so fewer points of failure. The more you can automate your data backup, the better off you are. The more often you test it to make sure that it's still working, the better off you are. And, of course, security at every layer. Those of you who are familiar with the OSI 7-layer model, many people have asked me over the years, there are 7 layers to the network. They're all there in the model, but where's the security layer? There is no security layer. And my answer to that has always been, yes, there is. Security is at every layer because security is a chain. And a chain is only as powerful, as strong as its weakest link. If you have any layer that doesn't have fully operational, best performance security, you don't have security. So the trend nowadays is moving closer and closer to establishing very strong security. And we'll be talking about security just before the end of today's session. Next up, how do we keep people communicating? How do we keep them connected? We talked about UCaaS, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it because this is very much at the core of how people are managing to work as productively, if not more productively, than they ever have before. We know that as of at least a few years ago, more than a third of the American workforce is self-employed. They're single operators, freelancers. And so they need a way to keep in touch with everybody, and nobody's in the office. So they were among the first who started working from home and started using things like UCaaS to be able to extend their reach. So here we have a person talking to another person over video. And the complaint has always been, well, it's so impersonal. And I'm going to take issue with that. The trick is to get the glass to disappear. And it's not that hard to do. You know, it was 205 years ago now, that Samuel Taylor Coleridge talked to us about the willing suspension of disbelief. That's what allows us to get engrossed in movies. Because even though it's impossible, some of the things that are happening, we're willing to disbelieve. We're willing to suspend that, and believe that what's happening really is happening. And the same thing here. If we can suspend our disbelief that we're really talking to somebody and make it as if we're in the room with them, that glass will disappear. It'll melt away. You're looking at somebody else's face, and they're looking at yours. And as a matter of fact, as you're doing this, you don't realize it, but you're getting better at picking up paralinguistics. Paralinguistics are everything that communicates other than the spoken word. So facial expressions, nervous tics, gestures, posture, people leaning into the screen a lot. I mean, all kinds of things tell you. People looking up to the right as opposed to looking up to the left. There's all kinds of subtle cues that we can pick up from people, and we get better and better at doing that when we don't have proximity to them, when we're not close to them. And they're appearing there on the screen. So people are getting better and better at communicating at a beyond verbal level, and that's a good thing. Many people, here's a plug for Coffee Talk, are having coffee calls, where, as you can see, this young woman is sitting there with a cup of coffee on her desk, and I'm sure the gentleman she's speaking to has a cup of coffee at his desk as well. They're talking over coffee, even though they may be thousands of miles apart. And it is that informal, and should be that informal. It should be the better version of speaking on the phone. You actually get more information because you're getting visual as well as auditory. Another technology that is helping us tremendously is recording. The ability to record a call. Yes, you should show the courtesy of letting the person you're talking to know that you're recording. But with today's artificial intelligence technology, another trend that's emerging rapidly is transcription. Artificial intelligence engines can perform transcription on recordings far faster than human beings ever could. You can get a typical phone conversation transcribed completely within 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe. And as the AI gets to know the people you speak to, it recognizes who they are, and it puts their names right there in the transcription. It gets better and better at it. So you no longer have to sit there scribbling notes as you're talking. You can actually pay attention to the person that's talking to you. And that has improved the quality of the conversations that we're having and the retention of the notes at the same time. It's unbelievable what you can do when you have a complete transcript of the conversation to work from when you're doing work based on the conversation. So recording and transcription are an amazing boon to us. And if you're not taking advantage of it already, it's something you definitely should be looking into. Then, of course, there are conference calls, group calls. And group calls bring with them all kinds of need to develop etiquette. So we don't end up talking over each other. And etiquette extends to a lot of things. You know, who's going to talk when? Who's going to who's going to respond when somebody talks over them? Some people appoint a host, a coordinator, who recognizes people and allows them to speak. That's a little rigid, and so some people don't like that. Other people are using the raise your hand thing. They're getting mixed results on that. Another thing that's happening is that people are starting to turn the camera off, and other people are starting to get really offended by that. It seems that if I'm showing you my face, I want to see your face. And it is becoming a matter of courtesy to appear at each meeting and then to be properly dressed for it and properly groomed for it, and to basically behave as if you were in the conference room with the other people there. Much more comfortable for everybody. Another thing that makes things more comfortable is having a headset. Unfortunately, or whatever, people don't really tend to do a lot of acoustic engineering in their homes or their home offices. So they don't always place the speakers properly so that there is no feedback. This can result in screeching noise. And so you don't want to be responsible for that. Keep a headset handy. Know where it plugs in. So if that does indeed happen, you can plug in and stop being the one who's causing the echo. Again, it's all about being courteous. Also, always have an alternative device. This is something I've spoken with several people about, lots of people about. Their main device fails. What do? Well, nowadays they can just pick up their mobile phone and click onto the meeting from their mobile phone, because all of the meeting platforms have mobile applications. So you pick up a tablet, pick up a phone, get right back on, and the meeting continues. Always good to have more than one way to connect, because you never know. You're working with residential internet service. It might go out at any second. The other thing is people are people. And so now there's this new trend toward making sure that your home office has all the comforts of home and all the advantages of the office. For example, a roomy work surface, where we started with a little shelf under the desk, or under the staircase rather. We now have big tables, big desks. It's very, very comfortable there. One thing that's becoming a trend is making sure that the chair that you sit in is not too comfortable. People have been falling asleep in the middle of meetings. It should be not too comfortable, should be comfortable, but should also be supportive. You're going to spend a lot of time in that chair. Get yourself the chair that you would dream of having in the office. You're buying it. Make sure you have good lighting. It's all too easy to harm your eyesight by not providing good lighting in your workspace. Too many people do it. And today, with blue blockers and other technologies that you can use to reduce glare, you can also work more hours without pain when you have good lighting. Make sure that you have a fully configured computer. We should have equality and equity between the office computer and the home computer. Make sure you have the ability to communicate. A lot of people are removing the desk phone from their desks, making more room on their desks, and turning now to soft phones or their mobile phone to be their primary communications device. And with the quality of these devices, there's just no reason not to. Obviously, you need to have reliable, resilient internet access. There's nobody else there. You may not need to print things much, but some people still like to read things on paper, so you may want to have a printer. But the most important thing, you just saw the arrow pop up on it, is a door. And this is a personal thing. I used to work in an open space in my home, and it was the greatest mistake I ever made. The day that I moved into a room with a door and made that my home office was the best day. You need an enclosed space. You need to have some privacy, the ability to separate from everything else that's going on in the home, so that you can get work done. So my strongest recommendation to people is get a door. Get a room with a door. I can see people standing up a door now. Okay. In terms of virtual meetings are now getting larger. Since the pandemic, I have attended a virtual wedding, a virtual funeral, virtual school events for my grandson, every kind of thing we used to do in big rooms are starting to happen in video conferences. And the bigger a video conference gets, the harder it gets to manage. This particular photo is very interesting. This is actually a photo. Everybody in this photo are employees of Zoom. I know that that's strange, but and I know that they're not our sponsor. Hopefully, you'll do your parties on Ring Central. But truth be told, this is a photo that came from Zoom of a party that they held, and that's kind of why I'm using it. It's a party they held. And all of the people are obviously laughing, smiling, joking, and having a great time. And if you look at the right side, it says this is one of 2 pages. There's probably about 50 people going on in here. When you're having a party, you really, really need to start thinking about etiquette and some kind of protocol to make sure that people don't talk over each other, to insult each other, say something unseemly that becomes an HR nightmare. you may need something resembling a proctor who makes sure that people don't get out of hand. I don't know anybody who's mastered that yet, but we're seeing more and more people working on developing protocols. I expect you're going to start to see books on the subject because we're having more and more big meetings on video, and people are discovering that you're saving an immense amount of money on travel. So even though the COVID pandemic may end or at least get under control, people still have good reasons not to have to travel to get together. It may be possible to achieve great results having everybody gather on video. A lot of people are making use of hand wave and other kinds of indicators that somebody wants to get the attention of the table. That may work. Some people are using formal agendas, so everybody speaks in turn. Clearly, you're not going to do that at a party, but you certainly can do it at conferences of all sizes and manner. And then finally, and this is just kind of like, I guess, the rules of the road for everybody, keep courtesy in mind. These are all people you know, many of whom you're very friendly with. Be sure to maintain courtesy with them. If you hear them speaking, let them finish what they're saying. It's even harder over video than it is in person. And this trend toward video conferences could lead to disaster if we don't learn to be courteous early in the process. I spoke earlier about contact centers, and clearly contact centers are becoming larger and larger. They're occurring in more and more companies, mainly because it's become the easiest way to keep companies in touch with customers. Facilitating call centers, the most popular technology, it's getting more popular now, is screen pop technology, where as soon as the phone rings, the system picks up who the caller is and displays all the information about that caller to the call agent. They're incredibly well informed going into the conversation. They can form a personal interaction far faster than they ever could before because they know what to talk about. And now, with the use of intelligent headsets, the call agent can actually be coached by the system. Intelligent headsets can tell the caller and their manager how quickly they're speaking, how much dead air they're leaving, how often they're talking over their customers, how often they're putting the call on hold. Customers don't like that. And many other data points about how the call agent is performing as a call agent. Unbelievable information that can really help call agents become much better at what they do. And that data can be displayed in front of them as well as recorded by their management. We're seeing a big movement now toward remote agents. Instead of having everybody gather in a call center, in a building with, cubicle after cubicle after cubicle, people are being engaged from home to participate in the call center. The call service that they're using makes it easy for the calls to be distributed to wherever they may be. And so any available call agent can automatically get the next call that comes in. They can transfer calls to other places and other people. They don't have to be in the same building to be able to do all the things they could do when they were in the same building. And here again, this is a huge driver of UCaaS and now CCaaS, which is call center as a service. You can have it run from the cloud to anywhere and everywhere your call agents may be. And with all that data coming in, you can also manage those call agents even though you're not physically near them. Powerful. One thing that always was a trend that is becoming even more of a trend now is the whole concept of omni-channel. Different customers want to get in contact with different companies in many different ways. No longer are they just willing to pick up the phone and call. Some of them want to be able to text. Texting has become de facto the standard for a lot of people. And so they're going to want to text to your call center. They may want to email to your call center. They certainly want a web interface, and many of them want an app that immediately puts them in touch with your call center so that somebody can do something for them that they need done. There are many other channels that they can take advantage of. Clearly, when you're planning a bigger, better call center, keep omnichannel in mind. Make it possible for people to reach your call center every way they can, because if you don't, your competitors are doing that, and you'll set yourself at a competitive disadvantage by doing that. Which brings us to one of my favorite quotes: "The network is the computer." That's Scott McNealy. Scott McNealy was and is still, of course, one of the original co-founders of Sun Microsystems. That's where he became famous. One of his observations was that when computers are networked, their power multiplies geometrically. Now, that's, I think, a tribute to Bob Metcalfe, the inventor of Ethernet. Not only can people share all that information inside their machines, they can reach out and instantly tap the power of other machines and therefore the knowledge of other people. Essentially, this makes the entire network their computer. And by extension, I would say the users become part of the network as well. So this is where we're going. People will extend themselves using the network to connect in so that they can participate in everything they've ever participated in before, but now they're doing it without having to be in a particular place. They can do it from anywhere. They can do it at any time, which is going to change the definition of how we live, how we work, how we play. It's going to bring great agility to everything we do, which brings us to the point that I certainly want to leave you with, and that is regarding security. Security is everyone's responsibility, every one of us. And the challenge we're facing now is that the threat surface has changed. Used to be your threat surface was the area surrounding where you physically were located. And so you could scan that part of the network and you could make sure you'd go hunting for threats and find them before they become a problem. Now, of course, all your people are distributed. All your people are all over the place. So every home of every employee on your network is now part of your threat surface. Does that mean you're going to be going around installing an industrial strength firewall and intrusion prevention and authentication and other kinds of security devices in every employee's home? Of course it doesn't. And that's part of the serendipitous arrival of SASE. Coined by Gartner, this acronym stands for Secure Access Service Edge. And what it does is it brings together two things that need to function together: the network itself and the security for that network. A major component is software-defined wide area networking. Another major component on the other side, zero trust. There's many technologies, but the most important thing, and you notice on the bottom of the right-hand side there, firewall as a service. Actually, SASE is a service edge, meaning that control is exercised centrally, but security is delivered in a distributed fashion. So you can provide security to every user in their home. You can monitor that security. You can respond to incidents and events occurring across that entire threat surface. SASE is definitely the key to a secure, safe future in widely distributed networking, the way we're seeing it today. And I suspect that it will continue to grow as a trend, as the most important trend, perhaps, that we see in the remote work, hybrid work future. So where are you going to find one last thing. All of this really focuses on an architectural concept of being loosely coupled. And when you're planning, when you're talking to technicians and engineers and technologists, don't be surprised if they bring up the concept of loosely coupled, being loosely coupled. The most prominent example of this is software. We used to develop software as a monolith, as a big block of text that contained everything the software had to do. And, if something went wrong, well, the software stopped, which is horrifying. If you've got 10,000 people using the same software platform and something goes wrong in that software and it stops, you have 10,000 people sitting still, doing nothing. Imagine how much waste that incurs. So that's bad. Today, we are now developing software in an architecture called cloud native. And basically, cloud native consists of microservices, small little routines, each one separate, each one in its own little container, along with all the resources it needs to function. And those containers are extremely portable. You can move them around the network from cloud to cloud very easily, which is why they're referred to as cloud native. If one of those microservices fails, it brings down nothing because it's detected, it's discarded, and it's reinstantiated, meaning another one is built instantly. And it takes over, and processes just continue. The failure of one does not cause the failure of others. We're seeing event-driven architecture that waits for physical things to happen. You've experienced an example of that when you drive through a toll booth, and the scanner sees you, looks at your E-ZPass, and charges you your toll. That's event-driven architecture. The event is you driving through the toll booth. But you're going to see more and more of this as we go forward, appearing in many places. And this is how we're going to continue to increase the scalability and the agility available in our technology. With that, John, I'm going to reach back to you and ask if there are any questions.
Thanks, Howard. That was fascinating. So many things you talked about, working from wherever, whenever, that people don't have to go to work to get to work. Just the impact of commuting and this notion of a perimeter free work zone. But that's my stuff. Let's get the attendees here. I want to remind the attendees that you can still type your questions into the Q&A box anytime, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. Let's see here. Let's go with this one. So Sam is wondering, do you find people are using project management software for managing baseload work, adding to the daily administrative workload of individual contributors?
Honestly, it's something I've never tracked. I agree it would be wasteful. I do think that automated workflow management is used simply to monitor and record daily activities. It's part of the daily activity. It replaces calling the boss. It replaces, getting the boss's attention some other way. And personally, I think it's faster and easier. The more we can make it push button, the better off we are. But that's also going to vary. If it's in addition to, it's wasteful. But if it is the way in which people can work from home and just click and say, I'm done, and I finished that too, and I finished that too, that's better than writing a report at the end of the day. Yeah, that's my thought about it.
Okay, so Cynthia is wondering, what are the legalities of recording these types of calls? Do you have to follow the same rules that apply for telephone calls? And if so, do you follow the rule of the state you are in and the state you are calling from and to?
Well, Cynthia, I want to thank you for supplying both the question and the answer. That is the right answer. I mean, the fact is calling is calling. It really doesn't depend on what channel you're using, what technology you're using. If you're in a state where both parties must consent to recording, yeah, you must let them know that you're recording. There are some states where only one person has to know, which means you don't have to notify. And that varies state by state. I definitely encourage everybody to consult their attorney to make sure that they're operating inside the law. I would say, yeah, you want to follow the legalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in California, it's a crime to record a call without the other person's knowledge. I'm sure that must apply here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Colleen is asking about the idea about more formalized protocols for meetings was interesting. Have you seen something like that formalized anywhere? Are there standards emerging?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I think it's still too early. I think that it's interesting. I think back. I mentioned that I attended a Zoom funeral. I forgot to mention I also attended a Zoom bris, but I guess that's end to end. I think that at the Zoom funeral, the clergy officiating at the funeral asked individual attendees to speak, to deliver their eulogies for the departed, and that was probably the most comfortable, most controlled large event I've attended on the web. Does that mean you need to get clergy to run your meetings? Geez, I hope not. But I do think that a raise hand and recognize protocol is a good one. And as I think back to all the meetings I've been to, eventually they evolved into that. There was noise at first, and then somebody took the lead, and on an informal basis, they established a protocol. Hopefully over time, we'll all get used to that, and it'll just become de rigueur, the way you do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Benjamin is asking an interesting question here. He's wondering, are companies considering paying more for on-premise necessary jobs in order to attract talent away from WFI, work from home?
I would say the answer has to be yes, and the answer has to be no. There may be some companies that are trying that. There may be some companies that are forced to do it, especially those companies that are losing people left and right. Clearly, offering them more money is one good way to keep them. I would think they'd be better served to at least try to let people work from home, unless there are jobs where they just can't. If they're working, they have to be in the office to do what they do. If there's physical work to be done with physical items and objects, then clearly they can't work from home. And if somebody's going to quit, all the money you can throw at them, it probably isn't going to keep them. You're going to need to find people who prefer a work environment like that. And hopefully, not for nothing, but there are 340 some odd million people in the United States, and a lot of them are looking for jobs. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody can know the answer to that yet. But clearly there's going to have to be people who are willing to do that. Not for nothing, but there have always been people willing to do even the most menial jobs. You need to increase your search and improve your management perhaps, but you'll find people who need the job, and we'll take it on.
Okay, so Benjamin is wondering, it's an interesting question. He says, how prevalent is it for employers to now consider an employee's commute time as part of their 8 hours?
I hope nobody's doing that. I honestly hope to God nobody's doing that. You should appreciate. Oh gosh, the only industry I know where people are expected to work more hours than they're contracted for is retail. For some reason, everybody I've ever known who worked in retail just worked ungodly hours. But if you're in a contract, if you're in a working arrangement with somebody, formal or informal, and you're employed for 8 hours a day, more than 8 hours is just not, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who will disagree with me. But do what you've agreed to do. And if somebody is willing to give you more, accept it graciously and don't punish people for it. Don't punish people for being nice to you. You know, it seems unseemly to me.
So we're at the top of the hour, but I want to squeeze in one last question from Richard, who's wondering any recommendations to assist management in seeing, in quotes, I'm making little air quotes here, the advantage of retaining, the advantage, I guess, of all this, of remote work in retaining workers.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this during the presentation, but it's worth saying again. You know, I took the title senior resultant for a reason, and that is that through all of my training, through all the years, I always learned that results speak. They don't speak louder. Results speak. Nothing else does. Effort doesn't. Time, you could sit around doing nothing all day, and if nobody's watching you, so what? You know, you didn't get any work done. So I have always, in my career as a manager, I've always managed people's results and measured their results. If I ask you to produce X amount of work and you produce X amount of work in the first hour, enjoy the other 7. They're all yours. Because I told you that's what I need. I'll quickly learn that you're capable of more, and I will definitely give you more. That's like raising people's quotas. It's the same thing. But don't measure hours, because that's not really what you're paying. It's like when people buy a shovel. They're not really buying a shovel. They're buying holes, right? They're buying the result of what you do with the shovel. You know, it's the same thing. When you hire people, you're hiring people to get things done, not to spend time in your place. So the easiest way to really thrill an employee is to recognize their productivity, recognize what they've produced, recognize the results they've achieved. And I can't think of anybody who wouldn't appreciate that recognition.
Okay, Howard, looks like that's all the time we have for our inaugural episode of Coffee Talk. Thank you so much for a terrific talk. That's Howard M. Cohen, Senior Resultant, my favorite job title, and my favorite presenter. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, John. And hey, everybody, bottoms up.
And many, many thanks to RingCentral, a leading provider of business cloud communications and contact center solutions designed to connect the modern mobile and distributed workforce via any mode on any device from any location, for helping us get this series going. Thank you, attendees, for being with us. Keep an eye out for our next episode and for your Starbucks gift card. It should arrive in the next couple of days. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.